Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Friday morning, October 28th, and I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room's open. I did pop the link into there, what we're looking at, and we're looking at Soul Expressions Abuse Recovery, and a woman named Becky, she's a therapist and a counselor, and she created this website, lots of good information on there, really dealing with child sexual abuse and sexual abuse. So it's good, some good information there. I think we're looking through it, and been sort of looking through it for a week or so, and we'll just continue on. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. You know, I'm not a counselor or therapist or anything like that. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows here on Blog Talk Radio, and I just want to be one more voice, really, just speaking out about this stuff and how, you know, just another voice of encouragement for survivors, right? So you have to listen at your own discretion. All of my shows are about abuse, and abuse is a sensitive subject, and you have to know what's good for you to listen to and what you're going to be okay listening to. And so if you think that the topics of abuse may bother you, you need to turn the show off. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you who's an adult who can help you make a decision whether you should be listening or not. And, you know, have somebody listen to the show with you, an adult who's older who can help you decide whether it's age appropriate for you, right? This is not for younger children, definitely not. And so get right into this and just continue on here. Her website, you can find her website at www.soul-expressions-abuse-recovery.com. So if you just type into your browser Soul Expressions Abuse Recovery, should come up. And we're looking at, we finished up yesterday with self-abusive behaviors, and next section is called Sexual Issues with Sexual Abuse. So that's what I want to start with this morning, and we'll just kind of look through. It's just a short little article. It's not too long, but I want to take a look at it. And I'm interested in the inner child healing work here on her page, but I want to kind of look through what she had here about the other stuff. So she's got a lot of material here, so you can be sure and check it out. So she says sexual issues with sexual abuse. And she says, since you were sexually abused, it is no wonder that you might have sexual issues in one way or another. Some women don't want to, this is mainly geared for women, her website, but we all know that men are abused sexually as well, and young, you know, boys and teens, and, you know, like the male gender is definitely not excluded, but her website is definitely built and geared for women, right? But we all know that men are victims too, and we're victims, right? Victimized as children, as boys, right? It's absolutely horrible. And so she says, some women don't want to have anything to do with sex at all, like they want to become nuns so they don't have to deal with the subject ever again. Extreme but true, she says, also not realistic. Some women go the opposite direction and become sex addicts. Sex anywhere, anytime, any place, you get the idea. So she says, by the way, there is a 12-step program for sex addicts. Look in the yellow pages or call Alcoholics Anonymous for meetings near you. She has a national hotline for sexual assault from RAINN, the 1-800-656-HOPE number, and that's from RAINN, RAINN. And she says sexual promiscuity is sex with many partners without protection, usually. This is definitely a sexual issue, she says. So some of my close friends have had what we call angry sex, which is to get back at our abusers through men we don't know. Pretty stupid, but it really doesn't have to make sense. The result can be, and she lists off the issues here, unwanted pregnancies, AIDS, STDs or venereal diseases. You could get killed, she says, raped, robbed. The possibilities are endless, all of them not good. And by the way, this isn't the right way to the way to meet Mr. Right. I tried it and it didn't work, trust me. So she's a survivor too, right? So she's going by her own, talking about her own situation a lot here too, right? She says painful sex is another symptom. Obviously, this means pain with intercourse. She says you can be obsessed with your sexual organ cleanliness and wash obsessively. There's many issues with people who've been sexually abused. You know, many people will take on and develop some of these obsessions, really different types of obsessions and obsessive behaviors or compulsive behaviors, you know, because of it. You know, I talk a lot about it, and I was just kind of shut down sexually. I didn't want to be I wasn't happy with my body, and I wasn't happy being a woman. I had witnessed a lot of sexual abuse in my family between my mother mainly and my dad, because my dad was always forcing himself on my mother. And the sexual tension between the two of them was pretty horrible. Like they hated each other, and they would do anything to hurt each other, right? And so it was horrible growing up watching that. And And then I was raped and sodomized by my brother when I was 8 years old, and so I really hated my body by the time, especially by the time I started to develop, like pre-puberty, like started to develop breasts and really started to look like a girl, like a young woman. I hated my body, absolutely hated it. And I thought it was kind of weird because my sister does too, and my sister is 5 years older than me. She used to tape up her breasts because she didn't want anybody to know she had breasts, so she would through all the years, through her teen years and stuff. She's 5 years older than me. She would tape up her breasts literally to make them flat, right? She did this for a long time. And the two of us have problems with being a woman, right? Even though we're not we both she married a man and she's interested in men and so am I. So I didn't turn to like the same sex partners, right? I've always been interested in men as far as my sexual preference goes. And the issue, so it's just that in our mind somewhere, something happened from growing up in that environment that caused us to not want to be women, not want to be a woman, right, with a woman parts, right? That's absolutely horrific, that this kind of stuff happens to people, and it does. It doesn't always stem from abuse. You know what I mean? Some people have sexual issues and they weren't abused as children, but we were abused as children, and there was a lot of sexual violence and sexual issues going on in our home. And I think our problem with our body was because my mother was always talking about the fact that my dad was raping her, and always talking about the fact that she hated being a woman because of the problems that it brought. She was being mistreated and abused by my dad, and she was abused as a child herself by her own mother, who made her feel bad about everything. My grandmother was a horrible woman who abused all of her children and other people's children too, orphans and stuff. My grandmother was horrible, and so she never got busted or arrested or anything. She even killed her own son and never even got a slap on the wrist. Just buried him out in the backyard. Yeah, this is the truth, man. So I was back in the 1930s, somewhere. So back then, in the hills of Nova Scotia, nobody was really paying much attention. And so my mother grew up under this situation where, she wasn't happy being a woman, So I think we kind of got that from her. And then I was abused sexually by my brother, and that didn't help at all, So by the time I was a young teen, I really didn't want to be for anybody to look at me as a woman. So I would dress very much I wouldn't dress like a guy, but I would dress neutral. I wouldn't dress like a woman and I wouldn't dress like a guy. It was just neutral, just jeans and t-shirt or whatever. I wanted to look kind of tough, but I didn't want anybody to see me as a woman, and I had developed these, this normal woman's body, and I wasn't happy with it, you know what I mean? But I didn't do any self-mutilation, which is great. I'm glad that I didn't. As far as mutilating my body because I was a woman, I didn't get that far into, I wasn't that far gone. But the issue is that it's always bothered me, and even into my adult life, it's been hard for me because I was sexually, assaulted by my brother. Sex was not a good thing for me. I actually was very much shut down sexually and didn't want anybody getting close to me. I had all kinds of problems with that, relationship stuff, and just not wanting to let anybody get that close to me. And yet I wanted to, see what it was like to be a normal woman, you know what I mean, and experience the things that, the good stuff, right? And so I always wanted that, but I was too afraid to let somebody in. But I did eventually let somebody in, and then I've been in this relationship with my sweetheart now for 16 years, and the man that I'm with right now, he's terminally ill. And when I met him, I didn't know he was terminally ill. And when I met him, I was very much in love with him, and so it wasn't he's quite a bit older than me, but the maturity level has to be there for me. You know what I mean? Just growing up abused and growing up mistreated, I really I can't allow anybody who's immature into my life, right? So it's obvious I have to, I would choose a partner who's quite a bit older than myself because the maturity level is there. You know what I mean? I couldn't choose somebody who's closer to my age because then the maturity level just wouldn't be there, and I can't handle any more garbage from anybody. So that's pretty well why I chose, I probably fell in love with him, and also it just seemed right to me that he was a lot older and a lot more mature, and I figured, okay, he's probably mature enough to be in a relationship with me because that's what it takes. I'm a serious person and I don't fool around. I got no time for any more abuse and garbage. I spent my life in that garbage for 29 years with my parents. And, I just refuse to take any more of it. Absolutely refuse. I mean, from anybody, right? I don't care whether it's a friend or coworker or boss or neighbor, somebody on the street, my friends, or, my partner or my husband or whoever. I refuse. I refuse to take any more abuse off of anybody. And, that's my right. That is absolutely my right. I can stand up for myself whenever I want to. I can put my foot down and I can say no more. You know what I mean? And you know what? You lose a lot of friends doing that. People want to be able to push you around. Bosses want to be able to abuse you. Friends do. Relationships, of all types. There will always be some issue where somebody thinks they can just dump on you and then you're supposed to take it. And then when you ask for an apology, you're not going to get one, right? Now, this is a fact. This is truth. And then sometimes if we want to stay in those relationships, we have to be okay with that behavior. For me, it's not okay because of the way that I grew up. I put my foot down and I said no more. No. I will be treated with respect and dignity. And when somebody makes a mistake, if they screw up and they end up hurting my feelings, then I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and ask for an apology or whatever. But if I don't get one, no, forget it. They're gone. They're absolutely gone. So my sweetheart, he knows how serious this is for me, so he doesn't fool around, and he, because he knows my situation, right? And he doesn't have to walk around on eggshells either. I mean, I make mistakes too, right? I have to apologize for stuff too, right? So, but the thing is we have a general mutual respect for each other, and I think that that's what counts. Really, that's what works, makes it work. And so she goes on to talk about, other scary issues about, that people who've been sexually abused may do. Sexual abuse of others, she says. A percentage of sexually abused women in turn sexually abuse others. She says this is not a huge percentage. In fact, most sexual abusers were physically abused rather than sexually abused, primarily according to statistics. But she says abuse is about power and control, and victims feel powerless and alone and like they have no control over their life. So one reason people turn to sexually abusing others is because they never really got help or treatment for their issues related to their own abuse. So this is what she says here. So she says, I would not go running and screaming in fear that you are going to sexually abuse anyone because you have taken a huge step towards your recovery to get help. However, if you have already abused someone, get professional help today. Yeah, that's true. Not everybody who's been sexually abused or abused will go on to abuse somebody else, and that's a fact, right? There's just no, black and white in this. There's a whole lot of gray area, and not everybody will go on to abuse other people, but sometimes it does happen. And so she says, you can stop the process and don't have to do it again, so stop the cycle of abuse now. She says, you're still loved and valued and supported. Remember that, okay? So she says, let's move on in recovery. Are you ready? Let's go. So she's got, that's the end of this article, just a short little article about it. But, that's why I kind of think that my brother did what he did to me, because my brother was really the one that was targeted for my dad's abuse, and I think that my dad sexually abused him, I really do. And just by something that I saw when I was about 5 years old. I have a real clear cognitive memory of what I saw, but I just didn't understand what was happening, right? But I know what I saw, so it's like, okay, I saw something, and it wasn't good. And so I think my brother was sexually abused by my dad, and then my brother was also physically abused by my dad. That's why the social workers were involved, because my brother was the one who, my dad had beaten up my brother, Rob, and he ended up going to school with a turtleneck on and bruises on his face and stuff, and the teacher noted, took him to the nurse, and the nurse checked him out, and he was all beaten up and everything, and he said he was afraid to go home, and he was afraid of my dad, which is rightly so. He should have been. My dad was always trying to kill him, and my dad hated him for some reason. Probably, he said it was probably because he was too much like himself. My dad is a schizophrenic, and he hates himself, right? And he found Jesus, years ago he was born again before, he says it was right around the time that I was born, that shortly after, a couple of years after I was born, that he found Christianity, found the Lord, and they grew up in a Bible-centered area, but he, became a real Christian at that point, born again, and he would go to church, and then he would come home and beat on his family, right? Especially my brother Rob, right? He would always beat up my brother Rob. And Sundays were just not fun around my house, you know what I mean? Like, I talk a lot about that in previous shows. And Sundays always kind of trigger me. I'm always kind of down on Sundays, just naturally, because I spent the whole time I grew up, Sundays were like a nightmare. You just never knew what was going to be happening, but it was never going to be good. So Monday morning was going to roll around and going to have to start the week out again and on a bad note. Somebody being hurt, whether it was me or my brothers or my mom or somebody. And so it wasn't very much fun. And my brother was really the most abused by my dad, my brother Rob. And then when I was 8, he sexually abused me and he continued to do that and use me as a sex toy for about 7 months. And I think about it, I've done some things and real thinking about it, and I thought, it's probably because he was abused, and he was the weak one. He was considered to be the weak one out of the boys. There was 4 boys. I have 4 brothers, and he was the one who was considered to be the weak one, and that's why my dad was doing what he was doing to him. He wasn't the youngest brother. He was the middle brother, one of the middle brothers, but he was considered to be the weak one, so my dad really used to just kick the crap out of him, and berate him, belittle him, and just try to destroy him, which he did. Right? My brother killed himself at the age of 33. And I love my brother. I felt so bad for him, because he was always the one who was targeted by my dad, and I was being targeted by my mom. And I think I was the last child born. I was the weakest. I was born in. I was really not supposed to make it. I mean, obviously I was because I'm here, but it's just like came in premature because my mother was dying, and they had to take me out because I was dying. So I was born 2.5. Well, I was taken out C-section 2.5 months early, almost 3 months early. So it was quite, just developed. I mean, there was missing my nails, and there was other things that weren't quite ready. So they put me in an incubator and left me there for a little while just to get a better weight, because I came in at about under 3 pounds, and which you would never know it today. I'm pretty tall and heavy, and so you wouldn't realize that today, but that's the truth of it. And so I was really, as a child, really kind of not well, you know what I mean? And I'm still not well physically or in any other form or shape. And so I think that's why my mother hated me, you know what I mean? Because I was this weak little child that needed her, and she was just like, I don't have any more to give. And she used to tell me that stuff. She'd be like, I don't have any more to give. I can't give you anything. I don't have anything to give you, like no love, no care, no concern, no nothing. I mean, she fed me, and that's about it, right? I mean, half the cleanliness stuff wasn't even there, really. It was like I didn't starve to death, that's for sure. Nobody in the home starved to death, but that's about it, So, I think that's why my brother saw me as the weak one, you know what I mean? Like, and he felt like he could then be the abuser, the aggressor, and I think that he was so psychologically screwed up by the time I was 8 years old. My brother had been killed. My brother Chas had been murdered. Right. I was about 7 when my brother was murdered, and my brother Rob really took it hard because Chas was my brother's protector. Chas was everybody's protector. He wasn't the oldest brother, but my oldest brother had moved out when he was 16, and he was gone. He basically ran away, but he didn't have to run away. He was just gone. And my other brother sort of took over the role of, my brother Chas took over the role of being protector. He wasn't the oldest. Rob was the oldest of the next oldest, and then Chas. But Chas was the one who was stronger. He was quite a bit stronger. He used to take my dad on, and he would try to protect my mother, and he would try to protect us. He would protect me. He was a good guy, but he got murdered when I was 7 years old. And that really hurt my brother Rob. I kind of thought maybe my brother Rob killed him. That's why my brother Rob was having so many problems. But I thought it was either my brother Rob or my dad that killed my brother Chas. I really thought it was one of my own family members who killed him, because my family's psychotic, right? And was always talking about killing and murdering and threatening to kill and murder and choking us and beating on us. So I kind of thought, why wouldn't I think that? I mean, my parents were murderous, and I thought, well, maybe my dad took it a little too far and bashed his head in, because my brother, he was killed by somebody bashing him in the head with a rock, right? And so I thought, well, maybe my dad did it. And then I thought, well, maybe my brother did it, because maybe they were fighting or something, right? And so somebody killed my brother, but they never did. The FBI closed it, cold case, because they couldn't figure out who had done it. But my brother was never right before, and he was really never right after. After the death of my brother Chas, Rob was just really, he was never ever right again. There was just, he was just so psychologically screwed up, and he really needed help a long time ago. He left after he was after he sexually assaulted me and raped me and was sexually using me for about 7 months. He moved to Canada, and because one of my other brothers was now in Canada, so the older brother. So he moved up to Canada too, and we're all Canadians anyway. So he moved up and he left the house, which was great. I was happy about that. And he became a cocaine addict. He was already a drug addict down in the States, but he became a serious cocaine addict up in Canada, where I live right now in Calgary. And who knows what he did up here. I mean, the only thing I know is that he tried to kill himself about 3 times. Who knows how many times he really tried to kill himself. But he did try to kill himself about 3 times and finally made it the 3rd time that I know of. And, hung himself at the age of 33 just on a street right about 4 blocks away from where I live right now, in one of these old apartment blocks, So his life was hell. He had a really horrible life. And I think that's why he did what he did to me, was because he was so abused and he was so screwed up in the head that, I don't know how anybody could not know that it's not right. Like, child sexual abuse is not right, but people do it anyway. And even people who've been abused would go on to do things like this, and you think, why? You know how horribly wrong it is, and yet people do it anyway. So we have a whole society full of sick individuals who think it's okay to sexually abuse children. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm speaking out, because this is incredibly wrong. It needs to stop. I wish we'd have flyers going to every single house, every single apartment, every single place where people live, under people's doors, forcing them to look at this flyer that has a big stop sign that says, child sexual abuse is wrong, stop it. I really do. And a little note, if you are sexually abusing a child, stop right now. You know what I mean? Because it's so incredibly wrong. And yet, we can't even get this stuff done on media. We can't even get this stuff written up in newspapers. Nobody wants to hear about it. Nobody wants to know about it. And in the meantime, my little 8-year-old inner wounded child who was raped and assaulted and sodomized and sexually used is sitting here screaming out going, don't let them get away with this. Don't let other children be victims of this. Don't stop speaking, This is absolutely incredibly wrong. So if you're a survivor, my God, you certainly deserve so much better. And you, me, and we, all of us child sexual abuse survivors, it is literally up to us to make sure that we get help and we have a good life. If we don't, it is our fault now. As adult survivors, I can't sit here and say, oh, well, it's my abuser's fault now that I'm sitting around and not getting help. Right. You can't blame that on them. I can blame a whole lot of other things on them. As a matter of fact, I do. But I don't, as far as me not reaching out and getting help, I don't blame that on them, because that's my responsibility as an adult. We have to make the right decisions for ourselves as adults, right? And so if we're sitting around doing these hurtful things to ourselves or other people, and we're just thinking, well, it's not my fault. Well, yes, it is, because as adults, that'd be like it's the same issue, because my parents said it was not their fault. My parents never took responsibility for the abuse they put on us, even in front of the judge. Like, they had to go to court, And my dad said, well, it's all their mother. It's their mother that's abusing them, right? And then my mom was like, oh, it's all their father. Their father's abusing all the children, right? And the judge was just like, mm-hmm. And then the older children said, no, it's both of them. They're both abusing us. And that was a fact, right? So, my parents would not take responsibility for what they were doing. They never ever did. My dad still today will not take responsibility for what he did to my mother. This is how people are, right? So, and they're both survivors. See, get my drift? My dad was abused as a child. My mother was abused as a child. And here they went and abused their own children and abused each other and destroyed their family, and tried to anyway. Did a great job of it. And then blamed everybody else. Oh, yeah, it's everybody else's fault. No. As adults, we have to make the right choices. This is definitely our responsibility to get help. And this is where, responsibility, accountability, and all this stuff, making the right choices for yourself, that is really what it's all about. And we have to get help. Like, if we're not doing well and we're struggling and we're self-injuring and hurting ourselves, we have to get help no matter what it is. Now, I don't trust the system, so I don't trust counselors and therapists, right? So that's fine, you know what I mean? The issue is there's other ways to go about it, too, and I realize that. There's group support. I love group support because there's safety in numbers to me, And also, I just trust. I'm more apt to trust a group support thing, instead of one-on-one, because I don't trust one-on-one anything. You know what I mean? Like one-on-one to me is abuse. I was beaten by my mother, sexually by my brother, beaten by my dad, abused by my parents. I don't trust one-on-one situations with anybody who has any control or authority over me. You know what I mean? If they, even a counselor or therapist, I don't care who they are. I don't trust one-on-one. Period. So that's why I don't have a lot of one-on-one friends. You know what I mean? Because I really don't trust people, and you really can't. People will hurt you, and that's a guaranteed situation. There's not anybody here, including myself, who is excluded from that. Everyone has the potential to hurt everyone, unless they're watching what they're doing, and watching their behaviors and taking responsibility for their actions, which most people will not do, and that's what I'm talking about. Abusers never want to take responsibility for their actions, and many of those abusers were abused as children themselves. And this is why she's talking about that. She's like, not everyone will will go on to abuse somebody. Not everyone who's abused will go on to abuse their own children or their friends or family or whatever. But it could happen, because if we're not watching our behaviors, then we're just as bad as those abusers, right? So that's the issue. We have to really be accountable for our behaviors and make other people around us be accountable for theirs. And that's why I don't have a lot of friends, right? Because I hold people accountable. I held my parents accountable years ago, and I got beaten for it. But I was like, you know what? I was like, look what you did to my face, especially to my mother, because she was always rearranging my face, and I had to go to school always the next day, or whatever. I'd be like, look what you did to me. Look what you did to me. She'd be like, I don't care. You deserve that. You're just a rotten whore anyway. I'd be like, well, that's not a very good way to be. You know what I mean? I'd be like right in her face, and I'd get beaten again for it. But I didn't care. I was like, you know what? You are going to be accountable. Was she ever accountable? No. But I really tried my hardest to make her be accountable. Because that's just the whole issue, is that people need to be accountable, right? They really do. And especially dealing with family members, man, I mean, I cut my toxic family members off. I only have 3 left anyway. And I thought, you know what? Those buggers, they don't care about me anyway. They're certainly not going to be at my funeral. And they're not going to do anything for me either. You know what I mean? And they're not going to support me. They basically run me into the dirt every time they see me. And so why would I want to have anything to do with them? Let's think about that. I don't have to let them in my life. It's my choice. If they're not going to be accountable and be responsible for their actions, they don't need to be in my life, right? They're just going to cause me more pain and more trouble and more torment, because they're sick and twisted, right? And they're not on a healing journey. They're not trying to become better. They're not trying to be accountable for what they say, what they do. So why would I want to have anything to do with them? So this is the thing. It is a lonely road. But what it does is it sets me up for an abuse-free life, which I really like, because I can't take anymore. I really can't. I refuse. You know what I mean? And so, what it does is it means it's kind of lonely. That's for sure. But that's okay, because lonely to me is so much better than allowing people to just walk all over me and abuse me and then not apologize. It's just so much better. I'd rather, spend the time with just a few close friends that I really trust and that I really love, who treat me right, than to have a whole bunch of people in my life who are just going to make me miserable. So, be very careful who you get involved with. Make sure that they're good people. And if people are abusing you, like even today, I mean, abusive, you need to make the changes to stop that. Whatever type of relationship it is, it is our responsibility as adults, that we don't allow people to abuse us. Well, then we need to figure out how to get out of those abusive relationships, and how to choose, better people for us in our lives that are going to be just like us, accountable. They're going to be there for us, and they're also going to, when they make a mistake, they're going to apologize, and when we make a mistake, we're going to apologize, and we'll move forward, and not continue to hurt us. Because as adults, really, that's our choice. My mother stayed in this abusive marriage for her whole life. She knew nothing but abuse, and I thought, no way am I not repeating that. I tell you that. I am not repeating that. So I'm so glad I made that decision. So I hope that you will too. So make sure you get some help if you need help. Call a crisis line. Do whatever you have to do, but make sure you do get some help, right? And, if you'd rather do counseling and therapist with a one-on-one, well, that's your choice. And a lot of people like that. They find comfort in it. And I think that's awesome. But it's a matter of individual, what works for you, right? So make sure you do find out what works for you and then go for it, right? So have a good day, everybody. We'll talk to you later. I'll be back on this weekend and next week as well. And possibly tonight. If I'm not too tired, I'll do my show tonight. Child abuse prevention is up to us. So we'll talk to you later, and take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.